Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this Board Docs subscriber webinar series. Today we're featuring Chardon Local School District, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Hanlon once again. Today we'll be talking about finding solutions with Board Docs for your school board with OSBA. Great, let's go ahead and do introductions. My name is Tom Duncan. I'll be representing Board Docs today, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Hanlon, Superintendent in the Chardon Local School District there in Ohio. Dr. Hanlon, great to be with you again.
Good morning, Tom. Always a pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Real quickly for everyone, we're going to do a quick overview of who Board Docs is. We'll then get into a little bit of information about Chardon School District. Dr. Hanlon will cover that. And then we'll talk over the next 30 minutes about some of the keys, the benefits to using a board portal system from a superintendent's perspective, what Dr. Hanlon has seen and how it has benefited him, not only at Chardon, but where he has used Board Docs in the past prior to coming to Chardon as well. So excellent. Who is Board Docs? Well, for those of you that aren't familiar, Board Docs is an advanced board management solution. We help our subscribers create, manage, and publish any type of board-related document from any type of device. With over 2,600 subscribers in many different fields, but the majority of our subscribers are in K through 12 school districts. We have over a 98% subscriber retention rate, something I know as a team we are extremely proud of, and three big reasons for that. Number one, ease of use. Number two, reliability. To have those 5 nines is something just almost unheard of, to have something that barely ever goes down during the year. Is fairly remarkable, and that's important when the clerks or board secretaries are handling agendas at the last minute, of course. And then, of course, 24/7 support, to have a reliable organization in which 90% of the time when you call into Board Docs, you're going to get a live person on the phone. 80% of the time, Board Docs is going to help our subscribers with those issues on that exact call. So it's a great experience for our subscribers. Dr. Hanlon, if you could, tell us a little bit about Chardon Local Schools.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Chardon Schools, we are kind of a suburban/rural school district located in Geauga County, Ohio. We're about 30 miles southeast of Cleveland. We serve approximately 3,000 students, and geographically, rather large district, with 90 square mile coverage. We've been using Board Docs since 2014. We were using the LT version, and as you mentioned previously, or as you mentioned earlier, I've had previous experience with Board Docs in a similarly sized district, more of an urban district, that being the Paynesville City Schools located nearby. And again, that district was about 3,000 students, and I had experience with Board Docs for about 4 or 5 years prior to coming to Chardon Local Schools in my current assignment as superintendent.
Yeah, excellent. We hear that quite often. It's great to see the partnerships and the relationships continue as folks move from districts. So when we look at the goals for Chardon schools, you mentioned you come into Chardon, you take a look at of course from a superintendent's view, the organization, the efficiency, and what was going on. What were some of your immediate goals upon coming in around the board?
Well, it's kind of funny coming into the district and having been so familiar and comfortable with using Board Docs in my previous setting. I walked into the Chardon Local Schools, and we were still producing hard copy board agendas, and as the slide indicates, about 40 copies of those were being prepared every board meeting. Everything from board members to employee association leadership. 5 copies were going into each building in the district, and there were public copies generated. And really, unfortunately, about the week prior to a board meeting, literally a lot of things shut down for our office, my administrative assistant, and so on, as her sole focus was putting the hard copy agendas together. And that was really the focus of the week leading up to the board meeting. I also found that it was very difficult, even with the number of copies that we were producing and putting out there, from a transparency issue with our community, there were a lot of people who really didn't know what the activities and what the school board was engaged in, contracts, recommendations, personnel actions, things that were happening in the district because, again, still very difficult to get access to that hard copy binder. In addition, making last minute adjustments, which are always natural to a board meeting, were very difficult. And then, just the cost of producing those hard copy binders was, again, kind of a cost prohibitive piece. So just overall, that was what I walked into. And as I said, I'd been very comfortable with using board docs previously. So took a little discussion with our school board. Again, it was kind of, we've always done it this way, and we don't need to change it. But I don't think today our board would go back in a minute now that they've had the experience that they've had with board docs. They just found so much more efficiency in terms of how we prepare for our meetings. And I'll give you an example of that. As I walked into the district, there was a standing meeting with the board president the week before a board meeting, go over the agenda, and yet the other 4 members of the board really didn't see the agenda until Friday of the weekend before the board meeting. Now, with using board docs, we have board meetings a year in advance that are already in draft. Board members can go in and take a look at those. They're really part of the process now. They see what's going into an agenda. They call me, they call my assistant, or they call a department head with a particular question about something that, purchase of a school bus. They'll go to our transportation supervisor and get information that they need. It really has made us much more efficient and eliminated the need for those pre-meetings and so on.
So Dr. Hanlon, that's a great example, and I think what you've talked about here will resonate with a lot of folks on the call right now. I guess if you had advice when we're talking about the board who maybe at first was resistant or staff might have been resistant, but now having used board docs, they would not know what to do if it left their site, right? If they had to go back and go the old way. What's your advice to those superintendents out there who want to do something like this, but maybe are getting some pushback from staff or board on, hey, our process works, why change it?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would really take a hard look at the costs that are going into producing hard copy agendas. Paper, copy, time, and time lost given, as I said, in our office, my administrative assistant was often focused on that board agenda preparation. When you're putting together 40-some copies in the week before the board meeting, that was a significant amount of time where I lost her productivity to do other things. So I would look at that, number one. Number two, I would have, if there are board members that are concerned about this or staff members that are concerned, I would strongly suggest finding a partnering district, a district that you can partner with that's similar in size to yours, to have board members speak to board members about how has the process worked. I know that was a strong selling point for my board, where my board president was very traditional in terms of the way we did things. But when I was able to have her talk with some other board members, that's was kind of the tipping point for us, because when she heard that those board members felt that board docs was so much more effective for their organization, she was sold.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. So as we get into a little deeper into the solution, you have here some of the benefits that you've seen since using board docs. Can you share with the attendees what those are? And as we get into those, I'll kind of show them what you're talking about at the same time on your site.
Right. Well, I think first and foremost is, I know that any superintendent, treasurer, school board member, we always strive for transparency with our communities. We want to make sure that to the extent that they want to invest the energy and time, that our community members are knowledgeable about what's happening. It just helps us look better as a school district, as an organization within our community, being good stewards of money and making effective decisions in terms of how we're managing the district. So first and foremost, our transition to board docs dramatically improved our transparency. We now promote it right on our district website. Members of the community can go in. We release the full agenda to the members of the community, and really there's almost no reason for someone not to know what's happening in the school district at this point from a school board perspective. We also transitioned to Chromebook devices for all of our board members. So each one of the board members has that technology. It's not expensive. We didn't have to, we're talking about a $250 Chromebook device that the board now has full access to the board agenda. So I think that has been a kind of a dramatic improvement in terms of how our board interacts with the agenda. One of the things that I like, and some of the listeners or attendees on the webinar may be thinking, well, there's information that I want to share with my board about something, but I don't want to necessarily put it out to the community. Board Docs gives you the ability to do that. If you go into any particular agenda item, you'll see that there is public content, and we will typically, let's say it's a contract with a service provider, we will put in that agenda item, the agenda item, the recommendation, the attachment, the contract that supports that item. But there may be background information that I need to give to the board. For example, why this contract recommendation is more cost effective to the district. I can move into either the administrative content, or on screen you're in the executive level content here. I can put some information for the board. Where this is very helpful to me is in the old days, I'll say the old days, I would normally in my Friday update prior to a board meeting go through the agenda, give the board members item by item, hey, this is why we're doing this is what you need to know about this one. Now we can put it all in the executive level content. The board members can see that right on their screen as they're looking at the agenda item. Still important to understand that public records laws apply. What I put in executive level content communicate to the board is still a public record, so we're always mindful of what we put there. But it gives us the ability to use those various levels and to communicate with the board.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's role-based security is what we have. And then you're able to, instead of making a couple agendas or your example with your Friday night notes, that you're able to have everything in one location and then authenticated and accessed depending on role, username, and password. So that's fantastic. The other piece, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Hanlon.
I was going to say, on the screen that you're on in any typical agenda that we are building, another thing that has improved our efficiency is in many school districts, for example, I'm familiar with this, the agenda preparation all would flow through one person. Quite often the treasurer, maybe their assistant, or the administrative, my familiarity has always been the administrative assistant to the superintendent. When we transitioned to board docs, what we were able to do is decentralize the preparation of the agenda. And so now my administrative assistant, instead of having full responsibility for putting the agenda together, she's kind of the director of the orchestra, if you will. My business manager puts in his own information, his recommendations. He knows how to build the agenda items. Treasurer puts her own items in and builds her agenda items as well. Other executive or senior level administrators in the district have the ability to plug in their full agenda items. And then what Board Docs gives you the ability to do is to reorganize those items in the format or method that you want to present them to your board and community. And as I said, now my assistant is more in the role of checking for formatting, making sure they're consistent with the style that we've adopted in our district. And again, the areas that you're on too, we also have the ability to plug in financial impact of a particular For example, if we're
Muted.
a new copier contract to the school district,
Unmuted.
the financial impact of that copier contract on our budget. Our board likes to see that.
Right.
So those are all the things that we can do, but the decentralization of the agenda prep has really increased our efficiency as well as an organization.
That's such a huge one because I think most every jurisdiction out there now that's in more of a manual process, we like to call it there's one intake valve, and that is the board secretary or the superintendent. And to be able to provide other department staff the ability to get into board docs to make changes is really phenomenal. And then they can come in, drag and drop, move things around. We also have in Board Docs Pro the ability to do a workflow that only allows department staff to see their items. In this case, you are using LT, but you're using it in a way that allow one or two very important staff to be able to get in. They can still see the agenda. If they need to make a change to the agenda, then they can. But again, everyone has a different process in how they handle things.
Exactly.
Dr. Hanlon, another thing that you mentioned when it came to benefits was the search capability. Tell us about search.
Yeah, search is a very powerful tool in board docs, and I have board members that take full advantage of that. You can use the meta search tool that is available, and what this gives the board members what it gives the board members the ability to do is, let's say I'll use transgender has been a topic of interest in school districts lately. And suppose the board members want to see, what are other school districts or other jurisdictions doing? What policies are out there? What are other people, how are they handling this? The meta search tool will give them the ability to go take a look at other jurisdictions and search on that term and see what's happening in that district. And it makes our district more the beneficiary of that, because they can bring that back to the discussion and say, hey, I saw this in a policy recommendation or an action that another district took, and is this something that we ought to consider?
Yeah, and Dr. Hanlon, just to follow up on that, there's a whole community with having nearly 2,700 subscribers now. All of those subscribers' public information is available to the district on the back end, not to the public, but to the staff on the back end through what Dr. Hanlon mentioned is meta search. And I simply typed in the term transgender, it searched, and it searched across all of the most relevant information. And as you can see, it's pulling up information in the state of Washington, Rhode Island, New York, Pennsylvania. So it's all available here. You simply scroll through these really nice looking tiles here from Pittsburgh Public School District. I could go ahead and grab this information, copy and paste it, and it's much faster. It's much more relevant than going to Google or making a phone call.
Yes, exactly. And another strength of the search tool is another application, I guess, is that, and I know this happens in all school districts, where all of a sudden, here we are in December, and we'll be asking a question. Hey, when did we act on a contract for our website hosting service? I use that because it just actually came up yesterday in our office. We're able to go in and limit our search to board meeting content. You can see up there in the search, you can choose that, and then we can search for our contract provider and look for the information much faster than going back through board minute books or trying to file folders and trying to find things elsewhere. This gives us a very quick way to search it. Go back. Suppose we're looking for a personnel action involving an individual. We can go and search for that recommendation, that person's name. Anthony D'Angelo's right there. We can pull up that information if that was something that we were looking for.
Yeah, and Dr. Hanlon, to your point, so I went back to your site. I included attachments because we can search all the way down to the attachment level. And you notice here that, and you bring up that example, I could use all the Adobe features here, but if I wanted to, I could actually click the Navigate There button from the search area, click Navigate There, and it will take me directly to that agenda item where this gentleman was discussed or this topic was discussed, and I could see much more information, the agenda item details. I could see any supporting documents that are connected to that and bring up those supporting documents if I wish. I could print this from this location. I could share it if I wanted to as well, either copying the link or sending it out via email. And then if I wanted to go deeper into this agenda itself, I could. And then once in the agenda, if I wanted to search within the agenda itself, I absolutely have the ability to do that. So the search capability is extremely comprehensive.
Yeah, it's such a time saver of a tool for us in our office. There, I can't tell you the number of times that, hey, did we hire this person on a supplemental contract to be the basketball coach? Go back and double check it very quickly. We can find it and make sure that we have the right answer.
Yeah. The other piece that I know that you mentioned as a key benefit was around policies. You had a pretty extensive policy handbook in the past, correct?
Yes, and I'm pretty, as superintendents go, I think I'm pretty particular about making sure that our policies, not that others aren't, but very particular about policies in our district. And one thing that I've always found with hard copy policy books, especially those that are out in buildings and in possession of board members and so on, is that you can never really be sure if they're working from the most up. Did that hard copy policy make it into the policy book that individual has? And we had probably 50 policy books floating around our school district when I came to Chardon. So our initial transition was, at this point, we currently host our policies in Google Drive. We've eliminated every policy handbook in the school district except for one, which sits in my office, and that's only in the case of a power outage or something like that we otherwise, this is what we use. And so you can see on screen that all of our policies are hosted there, and we're actually just in the midst of the process now of transitioning to the board docs policies. In fact, I think that's what you're looking at. Is that right?
I am. That's correct. Yeah, everything is now on board docs, so it's all searchable. You can have as many different books here, and as you can see, several different categories. And as I click into each category, you might have different items that are connected to that. As you see here, you have a certain type of numbering system as well. In your case, CBB, CBC. There's tons of different information that you can put in here, content-wise, attachments, and so forth as well.
Yeah, and the real power here is, number one, it gives access, again, transparency. It gives access to everyone in our school community, from staff to parents to students, to anyone that might need access to the policy. They don't have to go find a policy book. It's available right here. Second, it assures that we are all working from the latest version of the policy and the correct version of the policy. And now, we've eliminated, again, the paper shuffle and making sure that updates are sent out to buildings, to handbook holders. Everything is available right here online, and it makes it very, very efficient. The other feature, which I know you're more well-versed than I am, because we're just literally making this transition this week, is so when using the policy that you're on right now, if we made a revision to that policy, we can retire the existing version of it, put the new version in, but we have the retired version to go back to if we ever wanted to add, hey, when did this change? When did we now start allowing students from non-public schools to participate in interscholastic sports? When, and what was the reason for that? We can backtrack through retired versions and find those.
So I just transitioned, Dr. Hanlon, from your public-facing site to the back end. And as you can see, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I have the ability to see active, draft, and retired, as Dr. Hanlon was just mentioning. So I have access to all these retired items, as well as anything that's in draft, which again means the public cannot see. And then once active, it's available for the public to be able to see. Well, that's fantastic. Dr. Hanlon, I know that also there's a very big interest besides these benefits in meeting management. I know that we had chatted about prior to this one of the first things that you felt was an efficiency and a transparency plus was the board members being more informed than ever before.
Right. My typical scenario with the old format, the paper format, was that, as I said, the only person who was really in the know other than us creating the agenda was the board president, who met with me and the treasurer prior to our preparation of the agenda. Board members themselves really didn't see the full agenda until the Friday before the board meeting. And for anyone who's a superintendent, you know that means a lost weekend when all the questions start coming about why are we doing this, what's the reason for this personnel action, the phone calls start, you know, that kind of thing, as board members are scrambling to get information in preparation for a Monday meeting. Now, our board members, they see our agenda from the time that, and we literally start, once our organizational meeting is held in January, my assistant will create all of the draft meetings for that year, obviously not specials or emergencies, but regular meetings, and preload all the things that are cyclical, the things that repeat every year. So really, from January on, a board member could look at any draft meeting agenda, and as we get closer to a particular regular meeting, my board members all go in and regularly access that. They'll call me sometimes 2 weeks before saying, tell me a little bit about this particular item or whatever it is. The benefit being that by the time we get to full release of the agenda, which for us is Thursday night to board members, Friday afternoon to the community, I literally get no questions from board members because they've all been answered as we lead up to a board meeting. So that's been really improved our efficiency.
And Dr. Hanlon, I just for reference, I also showed that the board members are actually able to take notes as well. This is in the pro version, so it's not in the LT version you're using, but in the pro version, board members are able to take annotations either prior, during, or post meeting, and they're all time stamped as well.
Right, I believe because in my prior district we used pro, and if I'm going back a little bit here, but also like in an attachment, the board member had the ability to put like a sticky note on an attachment if they wanted to remind themselves to ask a question. You know, they could have that there as well.
Great. So that's an important piece for the board members. Also, you have here increased vested interest in district via technology. Tell the attendees a little bit about that statement.
Our district is a one-to-one district, so we have Chromebooks for students really in grades 2 through 12. We have a strong emphasis on blended learning. We feel that it's important for our board members to model the use of technology. So if you attend one of our board meetings or view it on the web, you'll see that all of our board members use personal devices to access the agenda, and again, they're really modeling what we are emphasizing in our school district as a platform for the effective use of technology and modeling that for our students.
Sure. That's fantastic. To be a thought leader like that is very important and kind of where we're moving. One of the things you have, the last part you have here is efficiency, the efficient use of time and governance abilities. One of the things we hear quite often is with board docs, we see our meetings move a little faster, we're more prepared. All of it equals better governance.
Absolutely. And how I would spin that a little bit differently for us is that I think we spend a lot less time on the routine items that really don't impact student learning. And I realize that every action that our board takes has an impact on student learning, but the reality is, some things are very routine, and it has freed us up for more time for our board in a meeting to talk about those things that impact student achievement, and have those important discussions versus kind of the mundane business types of things. We are able to move our meetings along much more effectively in that regard, less paper shuffling, just kind of move through the move through the agenda much more fluidly than in the past.
Now, Dr. Hanlon, I think a lot of folks will look at board docs and they'll say, wow, I could definitely see the use case. That's something we should probably have. Again, these are K through 12 school districts, and budget is of top concern and visibility. When you have something like board docs, which a lot of times is maybe some folks even say a drop in the bucket, but any kind of cost is cost. How would you, what kind of advice would you give superintendents who see the value but are concerned that, if we spend money on something like this, we are going to put ourselves in a tough position with, the board, or will they approve it, or what will the public think if we're not spending money on students? I guess just from a return on investment standpoint, what kind of advice would you give your other superintendents out there?
Well, I think I've already kind of touched on the just pricing out your costing out the time that you are spending, or the not the time, but the cost that you're spending just on producing a paper agenda. And if you really start looking at paper cost, copy cost, all of those kinds of things that go into it, I think in a comparison, I could cost justify board docs LT to my board simply in the amount of cost associated with producing 40 some hard copy agendas every month. We were able to realize that in savings. But number two, I guess the point that I would make to any board or superintendent is I'm not sure how you put a price on transparency and the goodwill that creates and comfort level that creates within your school community, how you put a value on that. Because there's simply no reason for someone in your community not to be informed about what the school district is doing if they have access to the internet. They can have access to everything that's going on, and for me, that it's very difficult to put a price on that effectiveness or that highly effective communication that comes from making sure that more people have the information. The other thing that I've seen, and I don't know that I would link it directly to our use of board docs in Chardon, but we've actually restructured our central administration and reduced clerical personnel overall. And certainly that is a byproduct, at least, of our use of board docs. We've been able to at least cut a few hours and reduce some cost in that regard. So I really think if you work out a little bit, the cost savings is pretty easy to find and to easily justify the use of the product.
That's great. I appreciate that. So the last piece we'll touch on is support. You mentioned you're the board members were very impacted by this. The staff was impacted by this, and then besides the full training, your ongoing support. If you can just share that your experience with the attendees.
Right. Again, as you mentioned, I've implemented board docs in 2 different districts now. First, I would say that for those that might be concerned, about can my administrative assistant or whoever your key person is handle this, I think that you'll find that the software the product is very intuitive, almost to the point of out of the box. You can be creating agendas, and it is very easy to work up to a level of effective utilization. That being said, the training that I've seen in both districts has been excellent, and has given my administrative assistants the ability to utilize some of the advanced features, and then when there's been a question, those questions have been answered, as you noted at the beginning, through support very quickly, very efficiently, and very capably. I really can't think of too many times that we've had to call board docs and haven't found that we've gotten an answer in the same phone call or the same interaction. It's been there, and the support's been there to make sure that we're effective in what we're doing in our district.
Well, that's great, Dr. Hanlon. I appreciate it. Well, that concludes our webinar. Appreciate the insights. It's always great to hear from you. It's always great to hear a superintendent's view into a board portal solution and that efficiency and management of the board and the board-related documents that are connected to it. Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We have Dr. Hanlon's email here. We have Ohio School Board's contact as well as a Board Docs contact if you're interested in doing a more deeper dive into Board Docs and seeing how Board Docs might be able to help you at your district as well. Dr. Hanlon, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. Is the second webinar you've been on, and it's always interesting and educational to hear from you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. And again, we would like to thank Chardon Schools. We'd also like to thank OSBA for their continued support. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. So thank you so much for joining this Board Doc subscriber webinar series. Look out for the next one. And until then, have a great day. And thank you for joining us. Take care.